Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. We have Bender, Zach, and Beans on the podcast today. We're really excited to get into some fun stuff in the NFL, looking way out ahead, and then also getting into some end of the year kind of things with the NBA. So, first, go ahead and give us a follow on Twitter at stands_life. That's where we're most active. So, come interact with us there. You can also follow us on TikTok and Spotify at Life in the Stands, and we're now on iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Life in the Stands. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And with the first topic, we're going to jump into some way far out NFL predictions. We're going to go into our top three Super Bowl contenders at this point in the offseason. So, Beans, we'll let you go first here. Who are your top three Super Bowl contenders, at this point going into the NFL drafts?
I would say right off the bat, I mean, homer pick. No, this isn't in any order, I guess, just my top three, but I would say Niners. I would say the only team that I have from the NFC. I know that they've lost a couple, key players with like Armstead and stuff like that, but I think that with the core of the team that we still have intact, the coaching staff that we have intact, I actually kind of am a fan of the addition of Brandon Staley as like a defensive, I don't know, assistant. I think the Niners are firmly in the Super Bowl contention again, obviously for next year. Um, Very indicative of if Brandon Ayuk is going to be coming back too. If he's not, then that would definitely change my tune a little bit. I would say number two, obviously, I guess, or my second one would be the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, I've said it multiple times since the Super Bowl that was supposed to be their down year, um, and then won the Super Bowl back to back. So, um, there's just really not an argument that I think can be made for why the Chiefs shouldn't be like the Super Bowl favorite. I mean, have they lost any big names this offseason? No, right?
Marquise Brown.
No, not. Yeah, I guess. Well, they added him, but like I don't like. I mean, I guess Rashee Rice with that situation that we don't know if he's going to be playing, or what, however that
Right.
goes. But so the Chiefs obviously are number two. The third one is going to be kind of like I don't want to say controversial, but I think that it's going to be kind of out of left field. But the Bills, I think that obviously with Stephon Diggs leaving, with that trade to the Texans, um, I think that Stephon Diggs was there for Josh Allen to take the next step and help him get to that, the levels that he's at now. But I think that the exodus of Stephon Diggs is going to take Josh Allen to the next level. And I think that they're going to, go do really good things this season for sure.
So you think the Bills are pulling a Chiefs where you're going to trade away Tyreek or trade away your best receiver, and it's going to
Exactly.
be
That's
even more
exactly the model
intriguing.
I
You're
was thinking
not
of.
you're not targeting that specific guy anymore. So you're like, okay, well
Mhm.
now Josh Allen's going to spread the ball around. He's going to become even more
And
dangerous
you
because
and
you
you and
can't
you've
hone in
seen that
on.
and you've seen that from last season because like you look at like the target share, Stephon Diggs was not happy with it. You look at the last like I think 10 games of the season or something like that. Khalil Shakur was their number one receiver in yards and catches. So like you see the trends of last season, the actions of the offseason this year, going into next year. I think that the Bills are going to make some noise, and I think that people are really counting them out after this trade.
I think the other thing is that it's a very wide receiver deep draft as well as quarterbacks. Not that they're going to draft a quarterback, but you're looking at a wide out now. If you're the Bills, so I don't question them. I just think there's other teams ahead of them and have surpassed them with offseason moves. Um, this is going to be the only year that I'm officially doubting the Chiefs. The Rashee Rice situation kind of um, is confusing to me. Like I don't know if he's going to have an NFL suspension attached to it. Hollywood Brown is a decent wide receiver, but he's still not a number one for Mahomes. Kelsey had a down year last year, still aging. So you wonder how long he's going to keep up that consistency. As long as Mahomes is kicking, I imagine he's going to be kicking with him, but there's still some question marks in my opinion. I think a lot of other teams surpassed them as well as the Bills, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think a team that you failed to mention that I probably would have put over the Bills at this point would be the Baltimore Ravens. Pretty similar team, and acquired Derrick Henry. I think that run game is going to be unstoppable. New tackle rules, all that good nonsense we talked about before. Baltimore Ravens are definitely a team to watch out for, and they're one of my Super Bowl contenders. You can shake your head all you want to. I just think you can't doubt the number one seeded team from last year and the acquisition of Derrick Henry. But moving on here, the Houston Texans, I feel like, have moved up into contention, adding Mixon, adding Stephon Diggs, adding a bunch of pieces on the defensive end. Um, and they still have an NFL draft to go through. So I think they have a well-established team. They overachieved last year, which gives me hope for them, as long as CJ Stroud is healthy. And hopefully Tank Dell's going to come back healthy. Um, Another team that I'd like to
Definitely.
mention, I think if you want to talk about out of left field team here, Beans, let's stick in the same division. I have the New York Jets as a Super Bowl contender. I feel like they have a lot of pieces around them. They kind of overachieved for the kind of quarterback play they had last year because their defense kept them in games. I think you add Aaron Rodgers to that mix, and it's a team that's a scary team. They might not be Super Bowl contenders to other people, but I think it's definitely a scary team and a team you don't want to see in the playoffs.
It's a good pick, I
Do you
think,
pick the
actually.
Ravens, the Ravens, the Texans, and the Jets as your top
Hmm.
three Super Bowl contenders?
All
Yep.
AFC. Well, I
I
mean,
just I just
Beans said it
I just
too.
have a hard.
The only NFC team Beans had was the Niners. I think the AFC is way tougher going into the next season. Way more competitive.
I agree.
Like we
And there's
mentioned the Bengals, we mentioned teams like the Dolphins. Like I know they're not like great. Don't make that face for the Bengals when you're talking about the Jets. That's the last thing I want to hear from you, guy. Aaron
Even the
Rodgers is
Steelers, though.
42 coming off the and Achilles. Oh my, the
yeah,
Steelers. Russ is a black quarterback to make it
there
to a Super
there's
Bowl in his
there's
mind.
like
Come out with that.
there's like 6 or 7 AFC teams that could be Super Bowl contenders right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, depending on the
How can
draft
they all be
picks,
Super Bowl
too.
contenders? They have to play each other to go to the Super Bowl. Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
like you that has the most chance to go to the Super Bowl. I
All
would
right.
say that the team
I'm
in the
not gonna
NFC
waste
be
a ton of time here on my three then, because two have already been mentioned. Uh, Number one, the Chiefs. I'm gonna go with the Beans right here. You can't doubt the Chiefs as long as Mahomes is there, and there are four NFL wide receivers, not good NFL wide receivers, not great NFL. As long as there are
NFL
four
receivers.
NFL wide receivers and Travis
Travis
Kelsey or whatever tight
Kelce.
end comes next, because I think Mahomes is gonna pay past Travis Kelsey as well. But as long as Mahomes is
Mhm.
there, the Chiefs are going to be competitive. And as long as Andy Reid is there and that pairing is there, they're going to be competitive. So I have the Chiefs. The other one that I have that's already been mentioned is the Texans. So I'm going to side with Bender on this one, actually. I think the Texans are in a similar situation with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, I think this season is going to catapult himself into the conversation with the Josh Allens, the Mahomes, the Joe Burrows. I think CJ Stroud is going to be in that conversation by the end of
What if
this
he doesn't?
season. What'd you
What if
say?
he doesn't?
What if
What
he
if he
doesn't?
doesn't?
Then it's a
Then
different
now the Texans are
conversation.
just bags all over again.
But CJ Stroud went through a whole NFL season. There could be a sophomore slump, but there's a lot of consistency there. So I'm confident in what CJ Stroud is doing, because it's also not um, it's NFL caliber plays. They're not protecting him. They're not
Right.
safeguarding him.
Right.
They asked him to go lead the team last year, and he did, and then he did in the playoffs too. So
Pause for a second. But Beans, how are you going to say that when CJ Stroud was like a top 2 MVP candidate until he got hurt and then still did his thing when he came back? There's no
I,
sign of him not being that guy.
I just the second half of the game against the Ravens was he that guy? How many points did they put up?
No, but how are you not going to bring up then at least
I
like
just think
inexperience
that
or a
the
top
Texans being
defense
the
point
Super
like
Bowl favorite is crazy, knowing that you just said that they overachieved last year. What happens to overachievers, especially young head coaches
but he
and
didn't have
young
the same pieces
quarterbacks?
last year that he's going to have
They
this year.
regret.
yeah, he's gonna have even more weapons this year. And you say young coach,
He's
D'Amico
gonna have
Ryan.
Stephon Diggs. He's gonna
But
have
any other
Stephon
time you want
Diggs
to talk up D'Amico Ryan,
and an aging Joe Mixon. I'm not saying I'm just saying that I don't think that they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. That's just all I'm saying. I just
well,
think that
we can agree to disagree
you
on this,
can't say
but
in the same breath that they overachieved last year and then say that they're a Super Bowl favorite going into this year. That just that you give me one other team that did it.
they have so many big pieces that they added this offseason that you're just completely
Right. Okay.
overlooking with that statement.
Okay, but
You're
the
too
All
thing
right,
deep
with
well
a
into
lot
this.
of
let's move
I'll
on
say
to
the
the
thing with a
next
lot
team
of
anyway.
money and a lot of veterans going into a team is it's going to take a lot of time for that to blend. The thing
Well,
is, a lot
let's
of
go
those
into the
defensive
next team
pieces.
here otherwise.
Let him go. Let him
Let's
go.
go to the next team. I am going to jump into the NFC now. I'm going to bring up another NFC team. I'm going to say the Packers are
I was thinking about
also in a Super Bowl conversation coming into this upcoming season. They added Josh Jacobs. I think their young receiver core has another year to gel with Jordan Love and everything that's going on there. They have youth on their side, so in my opinion, they're only going to get better. I think they're on the upswing still. They were really competitive last year in the playoffs. I like the Packers going into this season with the draft yet to go as well.
and Xavier McKinney on the secondary is a big add for that
Big
team that
pickup. Yeah.
I
has the
said they had
best.
a good offseason too before the draft even is
Yeah.
happening. So we'll
Exactly.
see.
I
I
mean, I think
think
they just had
honestly
the two big moves.
they're the NFC equivalent of the Texans right now, in my opinion. Because you have a young QB that's coming out of like his breakout year with really good pieces now that have been added in the offseason and have already shown with the right head coach and the right QB in those positions. Now they're kind of like it seems like not going all in this offseason, the Texans more than the Packers, but both teams definitely making some moves that maybe they wouldn't. Like if Jordan Love didn't have the season he had last year and they didn't go as far as they did, maybe you don't switch out Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs. Maybe you just kind of like, you know, ride it out, see
Yeah,
what happens.
Mhm.
But that's a more aggressive move. They probably do that because they're like, hey, you know what, we got like we think we have a guy, we have a chance.
Well, they're gonna have to pay Jordan soon. I mean, they picked up his fifth year option. I think he's gonna be playing on his fifth year option this year. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So yeah, I
because
think the Packers will
he
be
was
really competitive this
drafted.
year.
Yeah, I mean they were competitive last year. They gave the Niners a run for their money for the entire first three quarters of the game. I mean, like you said, there's the only thing for me is like you guys are talking about big additions other than the running back and a safety, which are positions that are marginal improvements in the NFL. They didn't add like a pass rusher, they didn't add a tackle or a top end receiver. That was the only thing that kept me from putting the Packers into my top three. And instead, I kind of went for the Josh Allen route, where like I think he's really going to take another step. I truly do.
I like the quarterback comparison with Stroud and Love. Um, However, I do think Love has an easier path in that conference compared to what the Texans have. I think the only difference there, then, if you're going to talk about like level of competition, I think their division is going to be very tough this year because you still have to talk about the Lions and
Yeah,
see what their offseason looks like. And
Bears are 7-1 plus Caleb.
Yeah, the Bears are pretty stacked now, and if Caleb Williams can show any kind of signs of life like CJ Stroud did last year, that's going to be a
Mhm.
scary team.
If Caleb Williams comes in and has a year like CJ Stroud did last year, the Bears might win like 12 or 13 games.
Yeah,
Yeah, they need some defensive linemen up front, maybe another guy in the secondary on defense for the Bears, but
They
I
have
think they're
depth,
pretty
but
pretty, pretty, pretty solid. Yeah, I think that. I mean, when is the last time a team this good picked number one?
right.
yeah.
The
Well, with
Colts, I
that,
guess.
I think we're gonna jump into the NBA topics. Um,
Peace, guy.
So thank you, Beans. Our NFL analyst will jump off the call, and we're gonna go into start, bench, and cut the NBA edition for Bender. So I'm gonna give three different scenarios of start, bench, and cut, and we're gonna do this sort of kind of like a rapid fire. Bender will try to answer semi quickly about who he's gonna start, who he's gonna bench, who he's gonna cut out of these three players. So we're gonna start with Drew Holiday, De'Aaron Fox, and Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh my. Okay. Of course, you picked two of the three being some of my favorite players. Um, at this moment in time, I'm gonna think about the importance to their teams. De'Aaron Fox averages 26 a game right now for the Kings. They wouldn't be in the same spot if he wasn't on that team. However, Halliburton's also the engine that runs that offense, and it's one of the most efficient offenses we've seen in a minute. Um, Drew Holiday, I like, but um, He's not quite the superstars that the other two are. I think he's very valuable to the Celtics, but I'm going to have to cut Drew Holiday. Um, if I'm going to start somebody, I'm going to start Tyrese Halliburton. It's going to sound like a homer, but I feel like he's just a better distributor, and he has shown that side to be able to score, just like De'Aaron Fox as well. Um, I just feel like he has more to his game to be a threat than De'Aaron Fox. I feel like they run a lot of their offense in Sacramento through Sabonis, and I think he feeds off of that a lot. Hence why Sabonis gets the triple doubles he does, and I believe he's the double doubles leader of the league. So I think that helps out De'Aaron Fox a fucking shit ton. Sorry, excuse my language, but yeah, I think I'm going to start Halliburton, bench Fox, and sadly cut Drew Holiday.
All right. Good answers there, Bender. Let's jump into the next three. Luca, LeBron, and Giannis.
Giannis can go to hell, so I'm cutting him. And good guy though. I just don't
Figured
like the
that,
way he
yeah.
plays.
I mean, good
Um,
guy besides like if you steal a game ball from him.
that's also true. Uh, uh, and then this moment in time, I'm taking Luca as my starter, and then I'm benching LeBron. Um, Same kind of comments I made with Halliburton. I just feel like Luca is the engine of that offense. Not saying LeBron isn't, but I think Luca at this point and age in his career is more of a threat than LeBron is.
All right. Last set of three here. Jared Allen, Daniel Gafford, and Daniel Tice.
You're gross. I don't even know why that's a question. Um, Start bench cut in that same order. I'm starting Allen. I'm benching Gafford because he's a young pogo stick. I really like him a lot. Um, and then why'd you mention Daniel Tice? I
Yo,
just why? I
great
can't.
with screening, great offensive rebounder.
He's definitely a good hustle guy and expanded it to the 3-point line, but no,
Hating on Daniel
nah.
Tice.
I kind of lost respect for him when I met him in Indy, but we don't talk about that.
Oof, we don't talk about that. Okay. So that's start bench cut. To wrap up this episode, we're gonna jump into who we believe is gonna be all NBA first and second teams. Bender, would you like to give your first team, all five of your guys in your first team?
Yeah, I feel like these are pretty easy as well. There's going to be a lot of debate, I feel like, more with our second teams than our first teams because there's a lot of flip-flopping you can do.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like the NBA media site, it's also kind of weird because we talked about this beforehand too. You made a comment about we're gonna pick two guards, two forwards, and a center in a positionless game. But the NBA media actually chooses what position they have them locked into for these teams. So like for example, Anthony Edwards plays the three spot, but he's considered a guard. So I think that kind of throws a wrench into some things there. Um, First team, let's start with the two guards. I have SGA and Luca. Those are easy picks. Just I feel like you have to pick the top MVP candidates on this first team. So SGA, Luca, Tatum as a forward, Giannis as a forward, and Joker as my five. Another thing to think about with these teams is they have to play the 65 games now. So you have to figure out who's played those amount of games, which is all sorts of messed up because I feel like Embiid would make one of these teams. Maybe not first team because Joker plays more games, but something to think about.
Yeah, so I'm gonna make this real simple. I have the exact same for my five. I have Shea, Jokic, Giannis, Tatum, and Doncic. So I think, with what Bender described, like it's kind of what you have to do with the layout of the guards, forwards, and centers. But I mean, those guys are deserving as well. They've all had great seasons. Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty clear cut. Let's jump into the second teams. Do you maybe just want to give your two guards, since this probably
Oh,
is going to be a little bit more of a debate? Just start with your two
you want,
guards.
okay, yeah, let's do that. I got Anthony Edwards, as I alluded to. Um, I would have put him over Tatum if he was a forward, just to let everybody know that. Because I want to stir the pot on that one because I don't think Jason Tatum's as good as people think he is. Anthony Edwards, number one. Jalen Brunson, number 2.
Okay, I do have Brunson. And I was really close to putting Anthony Edwards in there as well. I have some honorable mentions listed, and he's the first guy on that list
That's
because
fair.
of, because of exactly what you're saying there. So I do have Brunson. The other guard that I have is Steph. I think Steph, with the Warriors being in contention at all, and they just locked in a play-in spot now. Everyone else on that roster hasn't really had a great season. Like he's been the only consistent thing there to drive the whole season. So I still put Steph in there. I think it's not quite time to put Anthony Edwards in there yet. I'm still gonna put Steph in there.
See, I don't like that because I feel like if you want to compare Anthony Edwards to the Steph situation, Anthony Edwards kept the T-Wolves afloat when Towns went out for a couple of weeks now, who is returning, by the way. Believe at some point beginning of next week. Um, so that's good to see. But I think if you want to talk about people keeping their teams into contention, being competitive, I think Anthony Edwards is someone to talk about. He wouldn't even be Steph wouldn't even be my first honorable mention. If I'm being honest with you, I think he belongs on like a third team mention, not a second team spot. But we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
Um,
What about Devin Booker?
I don't think he makes the team either. He missed some time, I feel like,
Yeah.
and that's actually a very good transition into who I'm going to mention for a forward spot. I actually have Kevin Durant as one of my first forward spots on the second team. He's played majority of the games for the Suns this season and kept them afloat while Bradley Beal misses time, Devin Booker misses time. Um, they shouldn't even be in contention for anything, and he kept them in it. Um, so I think Kevin Durant as a forward spot makes sense, and LeBron as my other forward spot also makes sense for this.
Yeah. Yeah, this is hard. This is where it's hard because I've sort of like three names in there. Um, LeBron and KD are two of them. So, um, the other guy that I just think deserves to get mentioned in there is Kawhi because he has actually played the games this season, and the Clippers look good, and they look like they're going to be dangerous come playoff time. So I think Kawhi deserves some credit there for getting his games in. Now that this is the way that it is, so. I probably still put LeBron and KD there, but because there's so many pieces on that Clippers team, Kawhi
Mhm.
can miss games and it doesn't do much, but he deserves to be mentioned at least there.
I agree. And then I imagine we probably have the same center. I could be wrong, but I have Anthony Davis. So I think he deserves credit for how many games he's played this season as well,
Yep, yeah, I have Anthony Davis, and at least for him, they put him as a center and not a forward, because that
which
would
is crazy.
because who
Um,
would be your third center then? Who's going to be your third team center?
yeah, so again, thanks for the
Sabonis?
transition here, Zach. I have Sabonis as an honorable
Yeah,
mention.
yeah, Sabonis.
Um,
Yeah,
there's not much you can do because I feel like after Sabonis, you have to mention Wemby. Um, so there's not a lot of center play outside of all the guys that we mentioned so far. Um, but I do want to get into this because I told you there's a bunch of guys that I would put over Steph. And people can think I'm crazy and on drugs for this, but I don't care. Um, Kyrie Irving deserves credit for how many games he's played, also putting himself back on the map. I feel like he should be comeback player of the year this year. Um, De'Aaron Fox, mentioned him already, averaging 26 on that Kings team. Um, Kawhi Leonard was on my honorable mentions as well. So happy we're on the same page with the forward spot there
yeah.
because you mentioned him as your third.
I have
And
Halliburton.
I don't have Halliburton because I don't think he's played enough games.
I think by
Um,
the end of the season, I think I saw somewhere that he might have enough by the end of the season.
okay. Yeah, I mean,
Correct me
he's
if
worth
I'm wrong.
mentioning, but I feel like he's slowed up compared to a lot of these guys. I feel like a lot of these guys kept the same pace. And some of that could be by Tyrese playing by force. And that's more because he wanted to complete the 65 games limit. He talked about that with JJ Redick on their podcast
Yeah.
a while ago. One more name that I'm going to mention that I think people will think I'm weird for. Um, James Harden. I think James Harden deserves some credit for meshing in with the Clippers and Kawhi and Paul George and all those guys. He has run the show. His stats show that he's still playing at an elite level. Still not a fan of him, but I think he is worth mentioning at that spot.
Yeah. Here's a name to throw out. What about Tyrese Maxey?
I don't think he's quite up there yet. Um, I've been saying this, and it sounds crazy as a Sixers fan saying this. I don't even think he's a number two superstar on a team. I feel like he's better off being a number three because if you put him in a role where he's taking more shots, I feel like he starts jacking up threes. He's one of those guys that I feel like he could shoot you out of a game. Like if he's not shooting well, like I feel like it's just run and gun for the other team and we're down by 15, 20 points immediately. Um, which if you watch Sixers games, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a do or die by Maxey when he's not playing at this point. Which is also why I hope we get Paul George in the offseason. So
Yeah, Paul George would be an interesting combo there. But I mean, Maxey is averaging 26 points and 6 assists, and he's still shooting 45% and 37% from three, 4 boards to go along with it. So I mean, if you're looking at pure stats, like he's averaging the same amount of points on a Sixers team as the Kings, as De'Aaron Fox on the Kings team. So
you're right. I just feel like there's too much other guards and guard play,
yeah,
where it's kind of hard to sneak into that conversation. We're talking about like Anthony Edwards being on a second team this year after the T-Wolves were like a number one seed to start the year.
right.
At least all the way up until Towns got hurt.
Yeah. Anthony Edwards is going to be insane. He's going to have a lot of all NBA selections, a lot of all-star games. He's going to be good in the league for a long time. But with that, I think we'll wrap up this conversation and close out the episode. Thanks again for listening. Remember to go follow us on Twitter at stands_life. That's where we're most active. So come interact with us there. Also keep an eye out on there for Kyle's and Beans's articles. They're going to be doing those more consistently. Beans with some NFL stuff and Kyle with some daily fantasy and maybe some MLB stuff as well. So keep an eye out for those. Follow us on TikTok and Spotify, as well as iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Life in the Stands. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.